Alright, this video is going to be focused on the Kirkwall scroll. Now that's only part of it that you're seeing on the screen. This thing is very big and full of Masonic symbols, and I'm going to break it down. It's one of the most interesting things that I've stumbled upon. Actually, one of my Instagram followers or friends sent it to me. And so this is in the temple of the Lodge Kirkwall in Kilwinning, number 38 or 382 in Orkney, 38 squared maybe. But the Kirkwall scroll, and this is straight from the Square magazine. So that's the Square, the Freemasons. A hand-painted floor cloth depicting a myriad of symbols, Masonic and otherwise. It hangs on the west wall of the Lodge Kirkwall, Kilwinning in Orkney, Scotland. 18 foot 6 inches long and 5 foot 6 inches wide. Too large to be displayed fully and is stored in scroll form. It's composed of full-width central strip stitched at each side, 2 half-width side strips, and it's been described as a teaching scroll. Well, when I was reading stuff about Ignatius Donnelly, and when people were going around after some cataclysm rediscovering all these lands in Australia and the Aboriginals and stuff and the Native Americans, they said a lot of them they knew the Freemason symbols. And I think the Freemason symbols come from the Squatterman plasma apocalypse symbols, and this video is going to merge them. We're going to decode the Kirkland scroll. So what follows is a paper written by the Reverend J.B. Craven, 1897, edited by G.W. Spaeth, notes included. And this is by Brother Reverend J.B. Craven, PM. The Lodge Kirkwall Kilwinning number 3. And I'm going to show you the whole scroll here in a minute and show you some things that I found. But I was founded on the first day of October, 1736 by John Berryhill, Freemason from the ancient Lodge of Steerline, and William Meldrum from the Lodge of Dumferline. These two brethren have admitted other four. The six formed themselves into a proper court, of which Mr. Alexander Bykey, merchant in Kirkwall, was the first master. The lodge obtained a regular charter from the Grand Lodge of Scotland on 1st December 1740, which is signed by William St. Clair of Roslin, Grand Master. Now, it's just interesting, the timing of me finding this right around the whole Charlie Kirk thing, right? And Kirk means church, and church comes from Circe, which was an ancient, Greek goddess that turned people into pigs and revoked their human agency. And religion means to bind, relegar in Latin. But anyway, this original charter is still carefully preserved in the lodge, along with the curious scroll presented to be referred to. So even they're saying this is curious and odd, right? The Masons, the Freemasons. And most of the old minutes, meetings, and the count of the treasures. For many years, the meetings were held in an upper room of the old town hall, blah, blah, blah. 1887, the present hall was duly opened and consecrated. It possesses a curious old box bearing an inscription in gilt letters and the date 1736. It is ornamented with fine old claspings of ironwork and has 2 old locks requiring separate keys. That's 40 years before 1776. And they say Moses wandered the desert for 40 years, right? What if... I don't know. 1776 is just an interesting year. And it's interesting that's 40 years before that. But anyway, in the minutes of the lodge, we find mention in 1747 of Thurso Kilwinning, long since extinct. In 1759 of Royal Arch King Solomon's Lodge, number 2, New York, of which a drawing is given herewith, measures 18 feet 6 inches in length and 5 feet 6 inches wide, composed of strong linen, blah, 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 occupies the west wall of the lodge room, but the height of the apartment is not sufficient to show the whole scroll at one time. So they don't even display all this at one time because it's so big. So later they're debating whether it was like a throw rug or if it was designed, what it was designed as. Excuse me. It is very roughly painted in oil, the emblems down the center being mainly in pale blue. Interesting, blue. But the top panel shows some attempt to imitate nature, the hills being brown, the sea green, the trees brown, the ground reddish, Eve and the animals, which we'll see in a minute, and fishes pink. On each side of the center strip runs a ribbon of 3 colors, blue, yellow, and green, and blue being inside. Interesting. On the left side, the rivers and cities are green, the trees and hills are brown, and the same may be said of the other side, the tents and symbols being, however, blue. So a lot of blue stuff. The gases in our lower sky, when they ionize the plasma, that ionized plasma is blue. See the Blue Ribbon Award, the genie in Aladdin's blue, St. Elmo's Fire is blue. But anyway, the margin all around is a dark slate color. The border on the spectator's left would seem to represent a map of the wanderings of the Hebrews until their settlement in Egypt, is what they say. 40 years, huh? The river Tigris and Euphrates run down the center, though a pastoral county almost devoid of cities, but in the lowermost panel we are landed in Egypt with the Nile, running through it and many cities and buildings depicted. The right-hand border should apparently be read from the bottom to top and seems to portray the wanderings of the Israelites in the desert. The central rib band is not a river, but evidently a road, and is marked off in years, beginning at year 1 and ending at year 46. So feel free to pull up a copy of the Kirkland Scroll on your phone or your computer while you're watching this on one or the other, right? And just listen to what they're saying, see how it's laid out. They're supposed to be even coded with years and stuff, and then I'm going to break down what I think it is. So we start from the land of Midian and Mount Sinai and have the first camp, the fall of Manoah, a graveyard, the waters of the rock, the worship of the golden calf, the sepulchre of Sarah, of Aaron, the elevation of the serpent, etc., etc. And while the 46th year, the road branches into numerous smaller paths, 47 degrees, the problem of Euclid, 47 degrees in the precession of the equinox, Trump is 47. Anyway, one leading to a building which is probably intended for the temple at Jerusalem. Both margins, especially the right-hand one, are covered with place and city names, but Brother R. Muir, who has kindly collated our drawing with the original for me, writes that the names appear to be of more modern date than the scroll itself, and have not been all written in the same time even. The ink is different and fresher in certain instances, and some of the writing is plainly by a different hand. So again, these are Freemasons explaining Freemason stuff too, so believe who you will, right? But who knows how old this is, and who knows what was added later is basically what they're saying. So, even they find this odd and can't quite place when it was made, as we'll see, right? So the central panel speaks for themselves. They commence at the top with Eve and the animals in the Garden of Eden. But why Adam is omitted would be difficult to say. Well, I've got a theory about that, and it's a barn burner if I say so myself, so stay tuned. And end at the bottom with the craft degrees. There are several cryptograms, some of which I have deciphered, but others eluded my skill. At the very top is one such word, and another will be found at the base of the hourglass-like figure in the second panel. I know all about the hourglasses. On the cornice of the altar within the arch is a third. The next panel shows a cryptogram on the face of the altar, which I have partially solved, the chief difficulty consisting in the fact that many of the characters are incorrectly depicted. Or do they just change over time? You know, kind of like Hebrew letters and Phoenician script and Proto this and all these scripts, these letters. Even Greek letters, I think, have changed over time. So who knows if they're wrong or just older versions, right? But, making the needful alterations, it reads, I am hath sent me unto you. I am that I am. I am the rose of Sharon and the lily of the valley. Isn't that in Breaking Bad, Lily of the Valley? Haji as her Hajar, Hayi as her Hiyah. I am that I am, or I will be that I will be. Jal Dadaya. I have italicized 4 words in the body description because I can make no sense of them or even suggest any corrections in the writing which would make sense. I have merely translated them as they stand. The last word of all is in exactly the same case, but I am inclined to think that it was intended for hallelujah. So that's what he's saying, some of these writings and cryptograms on this Kirkland scroll that you're about to see more of. And then I'm going to break down and tell you what I think as far as what it means and what it's depicting, which may be kind of similar to their interpretation in some aspects. So to the left of this is something which might be a Highlander's feather bonnet or a fountain or even a tree with a scroll beneath. On the ribbon is the word thrice repeated, which if written in the same cipher would read Jugi, Yugi, Yugi. Oh, Yu-Gi-Oh? If not the same cipher, then it is almost impossible to guess what it means, and there is not enough for it to furnish a clue. The words 333 would obviously be possible, one, and it may be an allusion to the 3x3 so well known in Masonry. I don't know. I'm not a Mason, so I don't know what the 3x3 is. But I know Tesla said 369. If you understood that, you'd understand and everything, pretty much. The altar is the lowest panel, also has a cryptogram on its cornice and face, which, being transliterated without making any allowances for incorrect writing, reads 1 Chronicles 2nd chapter 48-49, Judges chapter 12, 6, 7, Genesis chapter 1, 4, 22, 1 Kings chapter 7, 21, Matthew chapter 1, 16, and 18. So look those up if you want. I have not done that yet. There's going to be a part 2 on this vid because it would be way too long because this is too crazy. It's about to get really good. So this represents the kind of faults we found in the verse given above. They arise from the want of a dot or the redundance of one. This guy's basically criticizing the way he wrote it. And it's talking about why it was on floor cloth and mosaic and all that. This isn't really... He says the original purpose of the scroll, he thought it was to serve as a floor cloth because that's the size would be suitable for that. Not a super important slide, but I wanted to include the whole write-up from this magazine, so I didn't leave anything out, in case somebody picked something up I missed. The actual tracing board, sometimes called also a square, was blank. Gradually, the design was transferred to the board, and the floor cloth preserved only the pavement. If this supposition be correct, the date of the scroll would fall into the first half of the 18th century, so in the 1720s, 30s, or very little later. Failing some clue, which we can scarcely hope to find at Kirkwall itself, its origin likely remained a mystery. The scroll can scarcely have been intended to hang on the wall as it does now, unless indeed a lodge chamber 20 feet high was contemplated. The hidden hand, the ancient Freemason giants, maybe? Anyway, Grandmaster W. Speth is saying this stuff here. So even they're saying it's a mystery that you know, they can't even hope to find any clues at Kirkwall. So here we're getting into the top, the first panel, right? And immediately what jumps out to me is I see an inverted dome at the top there, and I see a moon with 7 stars. I see Eve in what looks like the Garden of Eden, is what I would have thought even without reading their opinion. But no Adam? No Adam. But yeah, the inverted dome, the moon with 7 stars, and Eve with no Adam. So throughout this presentation, I'm going to explain to you what I think all of those things connect to, and what Eve being alone in that garden in this picture in the beginning means, and then go into other panels as well. But this will definitely be more than one part. So a lot of Masonic symbols, like the one on the top left there, lead me to believe there might be some kind of inverted dome. And at the top of our dome. And Jay Dreamers thinks the same way. Shout out to Jay Dreamers. Some things I've been influenced him by, but I also kind of got my intro through other means, through like Anthony Peratt, the plasma physicist who figured out a lot of this stuff. So I come at it from a little bit different angle, but I love Jay. Now, you see the collar on Osiris or the halo on Kali. They're both like rainbow, right? And things can get inverted depending on where you view them from. If I put a 6 in the middle of the room and you're on the other side, one of us sees a 6 and one of us sees a 9. So I don't know and if you see like a bullseye, if you only see half of it, it looks like a collar or a menorah or a coronal loop or a halo, right? So I just think there might be a connection there. And all in Egypt, Mesopotamia, and India, they all have scenes with these 7 stars in the sky. And some people think it's the Pleiades, or maybe it could be related to when this event happens, right? So that I'm tying this panel to. So they're agreeing a naked woman, presumed to be Eve, sits under a tree surrounded by animals, oceans, lakes, fish, mountains, canopy of heaven with sun, moon, and stars, and a cloud bearing Hebrew letters. Okay? So I think the 7 stars are very important in that one, and I think the inverted dome is very important from that first scene, and I think it's very important that Eve was by herself. We'll get into more about that later, Eve being alone. Now, in this next, I want to draw, look, notice in the top left, that looks like the logo for, what's that company in Resident Evil? The Umbrella Corporation. Also, and I'm also seeing to the right of that a yield sign. I'm seeing the Shamash symbol. I'm seeing Templar crosses. I'm seeing the hand of God. Down on the left in the middle, I see the ladder, the square and compass. plasma discharge patterns, figure eights, hourglasses on the other side to the right. I see something that reminds me of the Virgin Mary, and these pyramids are tiered steps in the middle there. And then I see the cross, obviously, and then the word ISH there very prominently. So I'm going to talk about all of those things. So keep an image of this handy if you want to follow along, because all of these images are very important, and I've seen all of them, a million times. And they all relate to plasma discharge, and when it's confined magnetically, and all of these symbols can be found on petroglyphs all over the world too, because there was an ancient event where the sky was electrified and the gas was turned to plasma, and it started following magnetic field lines and created these neon signs in the sky that became these ancient sacred symbols and these Freemason symbols. And the Mary, I think, is the triangle in the top right, just under the Shamash-looking sun thing. It looks kind of folded up like an organ of a female body that has a hood. That sometimes is used to represent the Virgin Mary. So, first of all, we're going to talk about this umbrella corporation, right? This is the image I kind of saw in the top left. And I've also seen images in movies. I couldn't remember which one. I thought it was one of the Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, where they have some kind of thing that looks like this, too. But which also reminds me of this. The top right image is a collage that shows people using a maypole, some circus tents, the big top, the red and white. This is how the white stripes symbolize this. Jim Carrey having his Laugh Supper with the Saturn shirt on down there recently is related to this. But in the very, very top right, you'll see an aurora caused by a meteor that was drawn in the 1500s or the 1700s or something. And these are all related, and there's so much symbolism that is related to something in the sky, be it a meteor, whatever that may be, falling, or a planet, whatever that may be, descending, like Venus or Lucifer, or a sun having some kind of coronal ejection causing this disturbance in our sky that might be associated with a comet. And it makes these patterns, and way more. Every pattern you're going to see on this Kirkwall scroll is straight from this event, and that's where the Masons and the ancient symbols come from. But the Umbrella Corporation is a fictional, villainous pharmaceutical company and bioweapons conglomerate from the Resident Evil video game and series, founded in '68. They developed dangerous bioweaponry under the guise of pharmaceuticals, and it's also the term that you use to hide other companies, that you kind of own a bunch of them under one umbrella. And again, there was the upside down triangle, and a lot of the celebrities make this sign too. They'll say they're doing the hand mudra, right, or the Illuminati. But what does a yield sign mean, right? It's red and white, just like all the imagery we saw from the Laugh Supper, right, and the circus. And it means, slow down. Something. Be careful. Something might get hit if you just keep going without looking. And this is Smash, right? This symbol is in the top right of that image of the Kirkland scroll I showed you. And, I think you see him. I don't think this is meant to represent a giant. I think he represents something in the sky. The crown is the coronal discharge. His wavy lines represent plasma discharge. He's holding like an ohm, like electromagnetical device, it looks like. I think he's meant to symbolize this event. And this is the next one. This is just a reminder of what we're looking at on the top, and then the next image on the bottom is a preview, right? The image we looked at first on the top, the second one that we're looking at now on the bottom. So you can just kind of get a reminder of these different images we haven't talked about yet, like the hand of God, the square and compass, the ones we have already too, right? Anyway, you can pause that. You can reference the list I talked about initially if you want, but here are the Templar cross, the different variations of the Templar cross. You'll see petroglyphs of these. You'll see He-Man wears this. You'll see starts to develop into the Knights of Lorraine thing, the Knights of Malta. This is the hand of God, where this plasma sheath kind of twists and filaments up and then branches off into 5 branches. There are different periods of this formation. It's When it's 3 branches, it's the weapon of the god, or the pitchfork, or the trident, or the vajra. Depending on what latitude they see it from, sometimes it'll be symmetrical and they'll see both sides, and it'll be like the vajra on both ends, right? Instead of just like a trident. And in that panel we saw, there was also the ladder, right? And this also, when it loops, when there's two toroids on the bottom of this and it shoots up, it kind of looks like the Tool logo too, their wrench logo that looks like male genitals. But sometimes they want to call this the caterpillar, or in Egypt they call it the day of the centipede when this thing happens. But all these petroglyphs, they match up to plasma discharge following magnetic fields, and experiments done by Anthony Peratt at Los Alamos. And we see the like the pyramid with the all-seeing eye on top, the central figure flanked by 2 things, and at the top it looks like Saturn. We see what looks like maybe a crescent moon there, the hand of God again. This is supposedly the goddess Tanit, or Ta-Neith. And in the imagery, we're also going to obviously see the Freemason logos, which I believe are also tied to the Alpha and Omega. If you see that bottom left image, that's the Chiro, or the Chiro, or the Cairo, or the alignment. And X marks the spot. It's a variation of the Squatterman event. And you see the Freemason little A, or triangle, or square there on the left, and then the fishtail on the right, or the anchor. And we're going to see more about this fishtail goddess later. It's the same thing as the Starbucks logo. And sometimes when the Alpha and Omega are lowercase, it's easier to see certain things. So it also looks like a set of Hooters too. Sweet. But no, the Omega is part of this plasma formation, and that's where the Starbucks logo. And there's tons of these twin tail goddesses like that. It's also the anchor, like I said, and the Alpha is the same thing as the Jesus fish, right? Ikoye or something. Ichthus, it meant fish, and then they transliterated it later with the letters to try to make it about a guy or something. But you see in the middle there's a plasma sheath with 2 toroids. They create these weird maze-like patterns through a process called magnetohydrodynamics, where the plasma is reacting magnetically. Plasma is a fluid. It's a gas. It's a fluid. It's not a liquid, but it's a fluid. Like water is also a fluid, but this is like magnetic and inner air, like lit up gas, right? And I think this is the Alpha Omega event of Vesica Pisces, the Virgin Mary, Jesus, the morning star, the evening star, Lucifer, all of it. But more on that later. Here's the chevron. This symbol is also a note. There's 2 symbols that look like that. The red on the bottom and the blue on top. Red and blue are the 2 most common colors when this event goes off. When they mix, it's purple. That's why we have purple sky, purple rain, purple haze. All those songs about purple skies. 1999 by Prince. And these, that gas station is called Chevron, and these are called chevron folds. And this is the pattern, right? And I don't know if they saw it in the sky, or they just know, Chevron knows that's where the black matte layer of plasmified last civilization is, buried deep, so they go there and get the oil and then sell our dead ancestors back to us. But yeah, here's more at the top about how the evolving electric discharge in the plasma chamber, it forms these different trifurcated, pitchforks, weapon of the gods, thunderbolts of the gods. You can see it as the fleur-de-lis, Thor's weapon, Zeus's weapon, the Anunnaki got it, the Indra from the Buddhist and Vedic, the Hindu stuff's got it. In the Kirkland panel, or the Kirk, whatever that was, panel, you also see these stacked like diamonds, and there's the spiral up the central staff, kind of like the staff of Asclepius or the staff of Hermes, or Fuxi and Nuwa from China, and they're holding the square and compass too. Nuwa sounds a lot like Noah, interestingly. But here's some more of these, kind of like stacked diamonds, or DNA, or the helix, or where that kind of motif comes from. And then also I could see in that original panel kind of the hourglass. There's an hourglass goddess called Kukutini. Got spirals all over. Looks like an hourglass, a bunch of X shapes, and you'll see the magnetohydrodynamics, the pattern the plasma takes. It makes those V's and those M's and those swirls, and you can kind of start to see it here, where the swirls with the two dots kind of end up coming all the way around and trifurcating and turning into hands that are kind of like depicting lightning bolts as well. But you'll see this T face as well. The T face is the big thing. And the two dots, always the two dots. And anytime that the Squatterman has arms or legs, a lot of times it's like two or three, they trifurcate. And because this thing is fractal, sometimes it can like even double up. So the dots can be above the arms or below the arms, depending on which part of the stack and the fractal image, like a totem pole that you're seeing from your latitude. Now here, you even see they gave him a beard. They even gave him a beard. It's a T-faced man with the counter rotating, right? Same here, right? It's a guy. It's a face. It's the Squatterman, but it's when the T's wrap around and become M's and then become like a figure eight. And you see the plasma toroids in the middle of it. And yeah, that's why he's got such big eyes. Hey, do I look high? Yeah, you look like the most high. Oh boy. Yeah, and these are the same thing as the Cucutini things, the Venus. But it also reminds me of the Ubaid reptile statues. But why is she holding a baby, and why do they have like egg sacs popping out their chest? Why do they have such buggy eyes? Oh, I guess kind of the last guy had weird buggy eyes too. Are they reptiles? Why do they have the weird funny hats? Is that a coronal discharge, a crown? Oh, what's that going on up there in Crete? The same thing in Utah, but one's like religious iconography made out of bronze and one's like a petroglyph. Poof, holding snakes just like all of the God Self icons and Master of Beasts. You got Diana under there, right? It's all these toroids. It's toroids, not eggs. And then this is like a hybrid of all of them. The Venus, the T-shape that folds over, the mushroom owl head, fractal, holding the baby with the two breasts that are too far apart. Yeah. Wonder where all this stuff came from. And again, it's always just the Virgin Mary with their child. Why? Well, parthenogenesis usually produces an androgynous female offspring, same gender as her parent. When a change in energy or direction is required, a male offspring is born. This is the model for a virgin birth. I wasn't expecting to find the Madonna emerging from the inside of a plasma simulation. I could imagine a Madonna in those rested lines, and not one child but two. Others who have viewed this image described it as looking like a fetus in a womb. The similarity and theme of motherhood was consistent. So somebody besides me has kind of linked different plasma discharge radiographs to these different images of Venus and the T-face and the Cucutini and morphed into holding a baby and all that. If you can follow the path, you can follow it, or maybe I'm crazy, or maybe I'm stretching, but you tell me. Here's the mushrooms, the T's, the M's, and then this is where I think they get this stuff from too. It's that same kind of, it's always on petroglyphs. Anytime there's something really, really, really strange on petroglyphs, it's like I can always find a plasma discharge pattern that matches it, right? Whether they turn them into like the way they stylize their buildings that they make, or the buildings that they draw on, or car or mold into reliefs, or like the lines on their helmet, or the things that are, a Christmas tree or a Hanukkah, like the Festival of Lights. We don't have one day of present. We have 8 crazy nights of Festival of Lights, the Hanukkah. But here's the Squatterman. And the T-face man head, but it's like a head instead of a face. Again, he's holding 2 weapons. On the one hand, he's got the trifurcated lightning bolt weapons. On the other one, he's got a snake or a serpent or a dragon or the plasma. There's a cross in the middle. He's got a hula hoop too. Here's more with the cross in the middle, right? And you're going to see more with the hula hoop too, because a lot of times, just like you'll see, there are 2 dots. And this is Thor with his hammer or whatever. The hammer of the gods. And the 2 dots are just the brightest part of a toroid. So if the whole thing is bright enough for them to see, they imagine it's like a god with a hula hoop instead of 2 dots. But here's the Templar cross, or whatever name you want to give it. And here's the Pope wearing it, who also wears the Atacama Giant sometimes on his thing. That's the Squatterman too. You've got the Anunnaki with this thing on it, the Knights Templar, He-Man. He-Man, look at that. Looks like plasma's coming down and charging him up. The red plasma from the sky. And he's got his ether sword ready to rock. But the cross, even the cross is in that Kirkland wall print. And we find the cross all over in different kind of, petroglyphs and rock art. And sometimes it can be more of a cross like that, like a symmetrical one inside of a circle. Sometimes it can be expand on the sides like that. And then different cultures just change it slightly and then lose or intentionally disrupt the meaning so we can't figure out what's going on in this world. But, that's why we have Anthony Peratt and all the people who research stuff to help me try to make sense out of what's going on here. And I think I'm on it. I think I got a pretty good beat on it. See the hula hoop there, whether it's the Seraphim or the Anunnaki, and he's got trifurcated weapons too. He's got his whip it good with his corona, his hat on, his coronal discharge. The two witnesses on Jesus hanging on the cross, Odin on the tree, Prometheus on the mountain. This could also be Adam Kadmon and Baphomet, because you can see male, genitalia and female. But the female would be too far down and too far apart. And a lot of ancient goddesses are depicted with their boobs too far down and too far apart. I should have thrown some examples of that. And trans people are that way too. But yeah, that's the Jed, that's the Squatterman. And then kind of on the very top left, you see the simulation of the magnetohydrodynamics to show you how plasma would respond to these magnetic fields. And then all the different images of spiders, of, men with their arms folded, of hourglasses, of X's. X marks the spot. Christmas, right? Xmas. Anyway, it looks like this thing on the left, but it just depends on what perspective you see it from, what latitude, what height, and what part's lit up the most. It can look like different things, and it depends on your cultural perspective too. But you can see all those things in them, and they just draw what they see, and it's like a Rorschach. It's like a Rorschach, right? And then through the years, it gets morphed into religious iconography. But you see that base idea of a central figure squatting or with his arms up, holding two things that are usually either like sticks or snakes. Moses changed rods to snakes or something, right? Or scorpions or lightning bolts, like you see with the one from Indonesia, and scorpions and giraffe. And, this is the OG buddy right here. Anthony Peratt forever changed the face of plasma physics in 1992 by connecting plasma discharge to the Squatterman petroglyphs around the world. And when I found out in 2020, it sent me on a 5-year obsession that I'm still not done with, trying to figure all this out. And when that squatting man, like you can see, the Russia is really easy to see. When it branches out and more than trifurcates, right? At the top, it can get depicted as a menorah or a seven-headed serpent. And, sometimes the dots are, because this thing is fractal, it's stacked, right? So sometimes the dots will be below, sometimes it'll be above. So this looks like a deer man wearing earrings, or a Baphomet with one hand up and one hand down. Right? All this stuff, all these, they're even sitting on a little pyramid thing. Both of them are. It's uncanny, right? Ancient Etruscan god on the right, Typhus maybe. Led Zeppelin, the heaviest metal, right? If it were a gas, it wouldn't, or lead couldn't make a Zeppelin float, so it'd be like a fallen angel, right? Like Lucifer, right? Like Venus. Anyway, I guess it's probably also just coincidence that the tarot stuff has the number 21, the world card, is just like the God Self icon, just like the Master of Beasts, just like the Squatterman, central figure holding two things, kind of this serpent energy spiraling up the middle like we see in a lot of the glyphs. And then on the top right, you have one of the earliest Greek depictions of Jesus on the cross. On the bottom left, you have a petroglyph done that is what they saw in the sky, right? You can see the kind of M or the T shape there, squatting man. This is also Shu from Egyptian, the myth who holds up the sky. It's also Atlas. You see when the upper section of it branches out into like 7 or whatever, it can be also Shiva, right? Shiva, Kali, a lot of times they almost always have the hat or the coronal discharge of some sort, either a cup or a spike or something on their head. And a lot of times, remember the X, the cross, the Xmas, right? It's a lot of times it's tilted and somebody's carrying it, whether it be, Jesus or this thing from Mexico that just happens to look eerily similar to this thing from India with the fire. Almost looks like fiery serpents, but definitely fire crown, fire corona, crown, coronal discharge, right? And they have the head because they symbolize death, right? Kali is the Kali Yuga. And then finally in that scroll, there was the word Ish. And in Hebrew, Ish is related to fire, but the connection is nuanced. In Hebrew, Aish means fire, and the word for man, Ish, and woman, Isha, are said to contain the root fire, but removing the divine letters Yod and Hey from them leaves Aish. This etymology is a folk interpretation that sex suggests the fiery essence of God is inherent in both men and women, particularly in their divine partnership. So the Ish could mean fire or plasma, right? Because plasma is not real fire. Anyway, part 2 coming soon.